Good.
All right, well, hi, my name's Kevin Leahy, and thanks for joining today's Google Hangout. Topic is data center energy efficiency. And joining me today in the room here is Ken Rappaport. Ken is the CEO of EEC, part of NTT Facilities family that specialize in building and retrofitting data centers for energy efficiency. And remote to us is Colin Curtis, who's our Director of Sustainability here at Dimension Data. And my name is Kevin Leahy, and I'm the Global General Manager of the Data Center Practice here at Dimension Data. I guess there's no better day to have a Google Hangout on a green topic than here at St. Patrick's Day in New York City, where Ken and I are. And if you hear cheering in the background, it is not for this Hangout. It is people walking by on the way to the St. Patrick's Day parade, and it sounds like 16th floor below, so it's quite a party. So we're going to assume that that's for the green topic at hand. And let's get started. Now, energy efficiency has come back up to the forefront. If you went back a decade, it was very much a critical topic, and people were getting very intense. But then came the financial crisis, and people reverted back to how do I just manage my costs more tactically. But now, fast forward to where we are today, and IT is faced with a different set of questions, a different set of problems. Hey, how do they enable the business? And the business has more choices. They look at cloud, they look at third-party data centers. And now they're being compared to much more energy-efficient data centers. Data centers, if you look at some of the big guys in the market, are quoting PUE ratings, for those of you who knows what those mean, in the 1.01 range. I mean, phenomenal numbers. Things that you really can't get to if you're a small data center because of the efficiency investments they needed to make in things like fuel cells, and really their whole business is that data center. But that's not most business. There's a very few that are in that scale. So how does a business start to decide what to do and how to take on this challenge? How to align that IT infrastructure with business need by taking advantage of what they have in their own data centers, third-party data centers, and cloud to actually align to that business requirement. To get us started, I thought I'd turn the floor over to Colin for a few minutes just to talk a little bit about how do businesses look at energy efficiency in the giant landscape. As that lead for sustainability, how do you look at it, and how do you see our clients looking at it?
Thanks, Kevin. I think you kind of introduced it in a really good way. That I think back in 2008, the whole concept of green and green IT was very much on the agenda. And then we had the financial crisis and times got tough and everyone went, gee, we've got to start saving some money. And it started becoming a little less important. The thing is, none of those issues have actually gone away. We're still actually producing too much carbon dioxide as a species on the planet. That's meaning the Earth is starting to get slightly warmer. And that's causing some of the extreme weather patterns we're seeing around the world. So although businesses were having to go and buckle their belts, I think at a high level everyone was starting to see that we've got a really big problem, and these problems are starting to go and hit. And the conversation has morphed somewhat into this idea of sustainability. So it's not just how do we go and do nice things, how do we make sure that IT is doing nice things for the planet, and it's not about hugging trees, it's actually all about minimizing your risk as a business. So making sure that you're going to be around in the next kind of 30, 40, 50, 150 years or whatever. Given that the planet we're living on is changing, we're having to go and deal with more and more people on the planet. So at a higher level, CEOs, particularly of larger organizations, are having to go and look at everything and say, you know what, I'm going to have to start looking at my business in a different way. I'm going to have to start looking at how can I make sure that as I grow, I'm not having a huge impact in the environment. And how can I make sure that I'm minimizing my risk by keeping my assets away from some of these areas that have been hit by some of these extreme weather patterns. And if you look at this whole idea of kind of global warming and climate change on that, and if you look at how businesses adapt to that, data centers are a really huge part of that. So data centers at the moment typically consume around 1 to 2% of the world's energy. So there is this global recognition that data centers generally are a big part of this and need to go and minimize their energy footprint. But there's also a recognition that IT overall actually has a good part to play. So there's a lot of research done to go and show that if IT was used in the right way, you could actually reduce up to 16.5% of the world's carbon footprint through things like managing energy more efficiently, through smart grids and smart meters, through looking at through and using the cloud as well. So instead of having these huge, great big data centers, maybe actually getting some of the economy of scale to move into smaller, more efficient data centers, like you mentioned before, Kevin. So there's quite a lot of changes going on in a few organizations, and I think particularly as this pressure comes down from the CEO, often down to the COO and down to the CIO, and then down into IT organizations as well, it's no surprise that we're seeing a lot of organizations having to go and look at greater energy efficiency within the data center, and having to go and look at things like cloud and understanding what energy and carbon impact that will go and have as well.
So, Colin, that's a great lead-in, and I guess if I took what you do, and sort of the next step in the process is understand that you have the business goals, and then underneath that, what are the business objectives for workloads and workload growth and things like that, and the IT manager is faced with a series of questions. One question that always is on the forefront is, well, how much belongs in my data center? You know, and for years past, I would plan my data center for maximum growth, and frequently, within 5 to 7 years, I'd outgrow it. So they'd have a plan that says, I'm going to double my square foot or triple it in the next 5 to 7 years. More often than not, though, clients now to me are asking, how do I shrink my data center? And the basis of that, of course, is some percentage of my workload is going to be in the cloud. And if it's going to be in the cloud, then how much do I need belong inside my data center? And with that, then, how do I do it efficiently? Because the more I take out of my data center, the less efficient it becomes when it's built in the normal mode, because it wasn't probably built in a modular fashion when you got started. So you go through that dialogue first, and then you start to say, wow, there's all these new tools. And pick your favorite hardware vendor, and they probably have these new ultra-low power servers. Well, can I standardize on those? Most cases we see clients then saying, well, I'm going to pick that for very certain workloads, the ones that are going to be very, very high scale. But I can't do that for all of my workloads. So you're always trading off energy efficient appliances and tools versus the economies you get from efficient process management of consistent standard elements. And so even within the data center, I have those pictures. A very key element, of course, is how do I drive utilization? Can I send the peak workloads out into the cloud or to some other consumptive model, so I no longer need to have unused elements? Because that 1.01 PUE number that we were told, from that very, very large data center, you have to remember that's the ideal condition. It's worse than driving a car where they say your mileage may vary. PUE ratings can vary much more than that because it's 100% loaded the right time of day, the optimum cooling period time of day. All those elements have to be right. And you take that and take it at middle of the night when traffic's low, and already your PUE's doubled. So it's not a simple, straightforward number, get a number, but what can you do consistently? And that's all about driving average utilization up by taking advantage of other things during peak periods when you don't need to own those assets inside your data centers. So there's a lot of technology choices, a lot of workload deployment choices, and then of course there's the smart use of technology. We hear a lot about energy management software and things like the ability to sort of see what's the temperatures inside that data center, and can I route workloads to the cooler spots of the data center. And I guess one of the big trends that we've seen over the last 5 to 8 years is back, when I was doing more of this myself, you would sit there and you'd pick the temperature that the people could work in comfortably. Or that electrolytic capacitor, some back from those legacy days, would run at successfully. Well, now you don't put people in those data centers. They're all done remote. And that means you can elevate the temperatures, and the components of the systems can run at higher temperatures. So just the basic design points were amazing. And if you raise the temperature 5 degrees, typically you cut the cooling cost in half. So that's a massive inflection just by very, very simple activities you can do by really maximizing the capabilities of technology. So that just gets us started. And then, you know, the data center guys, we come up with all this great stuff, and we turn to people like Ken and say, great, now make what I need perfectly energy efficient. So Ken, you've been in this field for a long time. What are you seeing clients do, and how do you tell clients to approach the question of how efficient is my data center?
That's a good question, Kevin. I appreciate being invited to the Google Hangout. So, you know, I think your comments earlier about PUE are not really the best way to talk about energy efficiency, because from my feeling is the big energy efficiency could really be in your area, Kevin, and Colin, in terms of making the IT efficient. So really, we've seen data centers that were filled up, let's say 30,000 square feet go down to 7,000 square feet. That's just a reduction. You get more throughput. You're using your servers more efficiently. That energy savings is so much surpasses anything I can do on the facility side. But then what really our job on the facility side is to make sure that I also think about the foundation to everything you're building on top to give you the reliability, as you said earlier, the performance, and obviously the value, energy efficiency. So you can make the changes you need to do to accommodate your business, whether it's applications, whether it's networks, whatever throughput you need. So then what we want to do, obviously in a greenfield situation, you have the big cloud providers, they get the opportunity to run those PUEs of 1.02 or 1.01 because they can come in and move to places that have great low cost of energy in the Northwest or other places in the U.S. or other places that don't cost much, have the right climate. But most of a lot of clients don't have that opportunity, right? So they're enterprise clients that may be a mixed bag. And we see a lot of PUEs out there being somewhere around 2.0. It varies. They try to drive it down. But what we try to do is we go in and do assessments. We think, look, it's the same as everybody using energy efficient bulbs or LED bulbs. You can really, if everyone in the world did that, which they're beginning at least certainly to do, you drop the energy. So we like to go into a data center and make sure that physical infrastructure can give that client the best opportunity they have to save as much energy as they can possibly do outside of what you guys do, which are the real big gains. So we think there's value in that, and that can be everything from air containment. It can be from raising the inlet temperature. We're hearing about major manufacturers being at 100 degrees F on the inlet, and that's the cool row. And the connectors are all on that side, and they're reversing fans. So there's some real interesting things happening on that. But, you know, low-hanging fruit, just blocking plates, making sure your air containment, your hot and your cold air isn't mixing up. There's some interesting new technologies that are relatively low cost, big payback, could be a year, 2 years, which are intelligent air distribution, air management systems. That software, they put monitors around the room, and they're able to actually learn over time artificial intelligence, and so they're able to, things that are counterintuitive, they can actually recognize that if they got 8 air conditioners in there, they can shut 6 of them off and get better cooling through the room. So that's another area that's interesting. Retrofitting. There is some opportunity if the technology changes significantly, meaning that you're going from a low-density data center that might be running at 50 watts a square foot to where you're going to high-density racks. And I've heard things, water-cooled racks going up to 60 kW per rack. You have the ability to retrofit with some air side or water side economers, adiabatic cooling. There's some really neat things we can do in live data centers to really reduce that and continue to allow you guys the flexibility you need to make the big gains. So I just like to think the infrastructure is important. No one seems to care about it, but we can keep it. Well, our goal is, again, to make it reliable, to make the performance there so that you can drive what you need to do, and then we try to eat whatever value we can out of it. But the big value, and I appreciate coming to these because I think we do have value to support all this, still I think the big value is in the IT, the innovation that you can bring to the table for your clients.
So it seems like the client has a lot of choices.
Absolutely.
And so there's technology choices, and you mentioned bringing in water cooling, and that means I have to potentially plumb the data center. And there's always people who are worried about leaks. I remember those questions back in the mainframe days all the time. How do I route it? So even that does need to have some forethought. But how do they balance the choices? Do I go for technology, or do I take the easy wins in the facility? Do you look at it on a 1-year horizon or several year? How do you balance the choices when you're trying to make the right decision for that availability, for the cost of the security of your infrastructure? How do you trade it off?
Total cost of ownership. You know, we really have, we for 30 years, you know, we've been planning, designing, implementing, and servicing. So we've seen everything, obviously, from the early mainframes to desktops when data centers were going to go away to massively parallel PCs. So you've done the whole spectrum, and there's some new technologies out there. We were just discussing this morning a 380 volt DC. So you don't have all the conversions. Essentially, you're coming in. I mean, distribution is being today on a high level. Electrical distribution are run at DC voltages. So now you come into a traditional data center. You're coming in with AC and you're transforming it to DC, hang some batteries, go back out of AC, and then you go back to the server and you're transforming it again. There is some thought to be able to distribute it through a 380 volt, be able to tie in what Colin was saying earlier about renewables. You can have solar. That's, you know, solar traditionally comes out 380 volt. A fuel cells, 380 volt. So now you're getting a more reliable grid, and you're able to feed directly into a 380 volt system. But there's some challenges with that in retrofitting data centers that weren't initially designed as a greenfield DC data center, or even as a significant brownfield. Well, those changes are things that companies like ourselves get involved with, and we offer to the client various different solutions. But I still believe some of the low-hanging fruit can be grabbed and should be done. That's just best practices, and you'll drop your data center energy. Even putting a simple system like intelligent air control can drop anywhere from 20 to 40% energy-wise. And for 2 years, why you wouldn't want to do this, it just boggles my mind. But those are things people should be looking into.
So it sounds like you can get some, you know, quick paybacks. And so a lot of the technology investments you get into, they take years, because you need to go in and you change your processes and things like that. It sounds like some of the things you're doing, you could get return values within, say, 6 months. What kind of return periods do you see on some of these low-hanging fruit?
I would say anywhere from, I would say, a year to 18 months is what we're seeing. So less than 2 years. I mean, they're not a significant amount of money in terms of what you're, you know, typically at IT is sending, but they're low cost. But it seems that they add up. You know, they add up by doing all these small activities.
But if you were a client and you were looking at a 5-year horizon and you believe that, let's say 30, 40, 50% of your estate would be in the cloud 5 years from now, which is, by the way, frequently what I hear. Could you extend the life of that facility for a couple of years through some of these things? So it's not just ROI on the initial project, but it's opportunity cost by diverting or deciding not to perhaps build. Do you see that as clients' approach?
Absolutely, yeah. We're able to extend out the life of that data center. And earlier you had mentioned about various hotspots. Some of the intelligent cooling can actually, where there's some new predictive analysis in these type of tools, that you can actually see on certain rack in the room that no matter how many air conditioners you have, it is a single point of failure. There's really no way around that with extensive costs. But with the intelligent software, you can say, well, don't put something critical in that one rack. You would choose to manage it differently. So extending your life of that data center, as well as giving them the opportunity to use, let's say they want to use some high-density racks. So we see a lot of hybrid. People are using the cloud. People are using their own data centers and they're determining where they want to put their equipment. We just try to provide, again, an infrastructure solutions that allow them to do what they need to do from a business purpose, and at the same time do it cost effectively, because you can spend a lot of money for what are sometimes minimal returns on the infrastructure side. You also, when you get into working live data centers, you always put your data center at risk. So you got to be very careful. And so the cost to pick up a 2 or 5 or 7% efficiency and knock down your data center for a week or a day or an hour may not always, has to be approached carefully, and that's what we try to do.
I guess the other part of the equation, though, is if you think you're going to move, shrink that data center, either because of technology benefits, they're just better, faster density, you don't need that much space, or a significant portion in the cloud. The other alternative, of course, is to move to one of those larger data centers, a colo or third-party facility, where they've made the investment in the power and energy. In many cases, that third party's facilities, a lot of the value prop is the network, but is also the power and energy cooling that they've built in. Do you see a difference between what clients do on premise and what a third party can afford to do? It's substantially different. They're drawing a line above a certain scale. One's a better answer. Below a certain scale, another might be the other preferred answer.
I would say certainly the large, if you get to greenfield and get to start brand new, which is what these colo providers are able to do. Yeah, you can pick up huge efficiencies. You can make with the modularity that they have, you get enormous efficiencies of scale. There are some, what's interesting in some cases we've seen where enterprise clients which are sometimes scared to move to a cloud environment because of security. Though I know that you, I think, are ranked #1 in digital security, so it's interesting. But where clients are actually taking and say, hey, they're selling their data center. Basically, say they're giving it to a quote-unquote a colo or someone who manages a data center, and say, you know, well, we don't want to be in that business, and just lease it back to us. And you, in that case, can get almost the best of both worlds as well. So you get the kind of someone else has to raise the efficiency of that space, retrofit and do all that, and the client just gets the benefits of a highly extremely efficient data center, and maybe all the networking and the digital security aspects that go along. So we see that.
So I do want to offer, if anyone has questions, you can put them in at the event page, or you can go on Twitter at #DD Hangouts as if you have questions you want to put in either now or even if you've watched the replay. Certainly do that, and we'll respond to you as we get the questions in. So please, if you have questions, don't hesitate to send them in. I know we want to, sort of move to the wrap up in a few minutes, but I want to go back around to Colin and say, we've talked about this as sort of a data center, but this is all part of a corporate view. And since you represent how Dimension Data is looking at it, and I don't think we're necessarily that different than anyone else in the world, how does this fit into the broader corporate picture? I would think that even IT has opportunities for sustainability, things like videos and conferencing and things like that, reduce carbon footprints in other ways other than just reducing heat in the data center.
I think you're absolutely spot on with that. I mean, we're very similar to our clients in so many ways. So we've set a whole bunch of targets in there to go and try and manage our carbon footprint. And I think we're probably in quite a unique position, because one thing we worked out was that just lowering our own carbon footprint on its own is kind of nice, and that's good to go and do, but we're in a better position to go and help other people to go and reduce theirs. So we've set targets that are a combination of how do we go and help our clients reduce their carbon footprints through trying to be efficient in their data centers, through trying to use cloud effectively, through trying to use video conferencing to go and travel less. And in the process how do we actually go and help them quantify the savings as well? So they know actually whether it's working, whether they are becoming more efficient, and whether they are traveling less as a result. At the same time, we try to actually manage our own carbon footprint, because we're kind of in the nice position of growing quite a lot as a business. And I think because a lot of clients are starting to go and, in that 5-year time period you mentioned, move some of their workload away from their own data centers and start moving it into the cloud, then what it means is that our footprint is actually growing quite a bit as well. So we've got this kind of dual side of things, that we're helping our clients reduce theirs and helping to go and manage our own carbon footprint too. So we're looking at how we go and help them within their own data centers, and we're looking at using as many efficiency techniques as we can to go and look at all of ours. So that's going to mean any data centers we build, trying to make sure that we're using techniques like free-to-air cooling or any of these techniques that Ken mentioned earlier on to make those data centers efficient. And also that we actually consider quite carefully where we go and locate our data centers, because we want to try and make sure that where they're located we've got good access to renewable energy, and that we've got a really kind of low amount of emissions, which is not easy when you're trying to get a good global spread of data coverage around the world. So yeah, we've kind of set these 5-year targets to go and try and help our clients take 2.8 million tons of carbon out of the global carbon footprint, while at the same time keeping our own carbon footprint to below 1 million tons. It's quite a challenge, and something I think a lot of our clients are trying to do something similar themselves, and I'm hoping that our own experiences doing this means that we can help our clients with their journey as well.
Well, Colin, I could hear cheering in the street for that, so it's either the St. Patrick's Day Parade or they thought your strategy is spot on.
I think that might be the Guinness.
And so, I think that's exactly right. When I talk to clients, I guess I leave them with a couple of key points. Right? One is, understand that footprint, understand the elements where IT fits in. First, start with a decision on, what workload belongs in in a data center that I need to own for various reasons, maybe competitive differentiation, maybe unique workloads, all sorts of data privacy. Can be any number of reasons why you would do that. Look at then what actually belongs there, what workloads belong there versus what workloads belong somewhere else. Perhaps in a better spot of the network because of network latency, perhaps in a public cloud because it needs to be more in a consumptive model. And then within that, then look at within what's inside your data center, what can you take advantage of, sort of really being efficient? And is it these new low-cost technologies because you have enough scale for them? Or is it just better management processes that drive utilization against the standard across the board using better management techniques, embedded workload routing to get the maximum you can out of that environment? But really plan for, the workloads that are critical. Don't overplan your facility. And then finally, look at the operational automation that can take some advantage in there. This is not, like rocket science here. The loads go down, turn off some servers. That particular workload area gets hot, reroute to another area. I think in many cases people are intimidated by automation because it represents potentially massive complexity. But the reality is, very simple rules can implement, a lot of savings, and it can be as simple as turn the, lights off when people aren't in the room, turn the computer off when there's no load required for that, 10 of the 20 servers perhaps you have there. But do that based on a policy view. Don't leave it to someone's manual intervention because that usually is fraught with errors. But Ken, same rule for the facility. What would be your sort of golden rules?
Well, absolutely. The one thing I'd add, I think you were spot on, except in the facility side, and even probably your side, you want to make your decisions based off of data. And for example, when you're using electrically controlled fans that are very highly efficient, have a nonlinear curve in terms of you drop, they're running at 50%, your power is dropped by 70%. So it's somewhat counterintuitive that, let's say you'd say, okay, I've got 3 air conditioners. If I drop one off, well, that's more effective. And you find if they have electric controlled fans, running all 3 will actually save almost 40 or 50% greater than shutting one down. So it's somewhat, but that is you need the tools to have the data to enact those things. But clearly, there's a lot of opportunities to save energy. I think when what you're looking at is whether you can process things in the cloud, whether you can process things in your enterprise, or some hybrid method in between. Our goal here as part of the NTT group and everybody else here is in the infrastructure, just trying to help people understand what they can do to maximize their energy efficiency without impacting their reliability and allowing them the performance to do what they need to do because the business still has to drive forward. And these things are nice. They're certainly got to be balanced. But to me, it's still reliability, performance, and then let's make sure we can do it as effectively as we can from a global sustainability aspect.
Wow, what a concept! Use data to make decisions about data centers. Should be easy to remember. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining, and Colin for participating, and Ken for joining me.
Thank you very much.
And thanks everyone on the internet who took the time to join.
Everyone have a happy St. Paddy's Day.
There we go. Bye all.